Hi everyone, Olive here, and welcome to my May wrap-up. Basically, I want to apologize for the entire month of May. It was a struggle, book-wise, for several reasons. I actually just skimmed over my May TBR to, take stock of what I have read, what I have not, and let's just say things did not go as planned. But I do have a couple of really good excuses. So number one, I got a new job, which was super exciting. I am so stoked, and that's taken up a ton of my time. And I also went back home to visit my family and Rose and Feather, of course. I also apologize because I haven't been able to reply to some of your wonderful comments like I usually do, so I'm so sorry about that. However, I do have a really good feeling about reading in the month of June. There's so many books I'm excited to read. So you'll hear about that next week in my June TBR. However, in the meantime, this week you get to hear about what I actually did end up reading in May. The very first book that I tackled this month is Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly, and this was in my May TBR, so thank God I actually succeeded with one book this month. I really wanted to read this book because I haven't seen the movie yet, and I do want to see the movie, but book before movie, am I right? So I was super excited about reading this. It is, looks like a very feminist book, which drew me in immediately. Women are obviously in a field that they are not necessarily associated with, so in case you're not sure what this book is totally about, it's about women in the developing aeronautics space program in the United States. However, what I thought this book was, and what this book turned out to be two totally different things, which isn't necessarily bad, but let me explain. My very first misconception of this book was that it was about three women. Admittedly, that is a massive assumption on my part. There are three women on the cover. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are definitely way more than three women mentioned in this book, which turns into a way more powerful story that way. A lot more interconnected relationships between the women in this book, and in case you don't know too much about it, it is based on a true story, or otherwise known as history. My second misconception about Hidden Figures is that I thought it was historical fiction. It has very detailed information on time from the basically World War II up until first walk on the moon or so. So, lots of great information, lots of stuff I had no idea about whatsoever, and that part was really great. However, I do find this was a little bit harder for me to get through because it is so packed with information that I'm not familiar with. I'm not a sciencey person whatsoever, in case you can't tell or didn't know, and obviously a book about space gonna have a few science terminology things in it, but it was a little bit of a struggle to finish this, not because it wasn't interesting, just because a lot of facts, a lot of great facts, but a lot of facts. The next two books I read this month were not on my May TBR whatsoever. A friend very kindly lent me 4 of her books, and I was trying to get through them really quickly so that I could give them back to her, and then she ended up giving me the books, which was so kind of her, so I sort of had to read those books because they looked really good. I was tempted, okay? I read Still Alice. I knew this book existed. I saw that it was a movie. Haven't really necessarily cared to watch the movie. Now I do after reading this book, I have to say. This is definitely more of a feather book. This book is about a woman who is diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I don't know too much about Alzheimer's. I haven't had any experience with it in my family or friend-wise. Praying that does not happen, especially after reading this book. This book gives you a lot of really in-depth information on what it means to live with Alzheimer's, as well as the effect it has on your friends and family. So the person who actually wrote this book has a PhD in neuroscience from Harvard. Not only is this book incredibly accurate, it is incredibly well written. Very easy to read, I would say, but in a way that you're still learning stuff. This is definitely a book I would recommend. Lisa Genova is a great author. Highly recommend. It'd be a really good summer read too, actually. The third book I read this month blew me away. I absolutely loved it. It is Margaret Atwood's The Heart Goes Last. I have never read Margaret Atwood before this time. I have wanted to. It's one of those authors in my parents' basement that they've just had lots of books by her forever and ever and ever. Everyone right now is reading Handmaid's Tale, which I of course also really want to read, and I stole from my parents when I went home. However, this is what was accessible to me before Handmaid's Tale, so I read this first, and I am officially on the Margaret Atwood train. And in case you did not know, Margaret Atwood is a Canadian author and actually lives right here in this city with me called Toronto, so that is pretty sweet. The Heart Goes Last takes place in a dystopic future in the United States, in the not too distant future, and basically an economic downturn happens, very devastating, and the two main characters, Stan and Charmaine, make the choice to go and be a part of an experimental community which will provide them with all of their basic needs, and then some. And basically, the only catch is that 1 month they'll have to spend in their nice house with all their things, all their basic needs being met, jobs, etc. And the following month, they will have to go live and work at the prison. So basically, then there's a rotating cycle of home, prison, blah, 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 for the rest of time and eternity. The catch also is that once you're in the community, you cannot get out. So a couple of really cool things about this book, I'm not going to give you spoilers, is that it really has a social commentary on prisons. What are the role of prisons in our society? How do we view prisons? What are our feelings and preconceived notions about them? And what are their actual functions? As I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot of really messed up stuff that happens in this book. There's a lot of twists and turns, amazing characters, great character development. I would highly, highly recommend this book. And you all just really need to go out and read this book. Thank you so much for watching my May wrap-up. My June wrap-up will hopefully be a little bit more riveting, because I do have some really awesome books I plan on reading in June, and I'm also in the middle of reading the latest Shadowhunter book by Cassandra Clare. Look, it's so pretty! So I will definitely be reviewing Lord of Shadows for my June wrap-up. And lastly, in Rose's last video, she talked about something she likes to do outside of reading. So for her, that is crafting. I thought I would share what I like to do in my spare time besides reading. One of the hobbies I have done the longest alongside reading is playing piano. I've played piano since I was 4 or 5. Anyways, I hope you all have a great week. Of course, Feather will be posting like normal on Saturday, Rose on Monday. Happy reading, everyone!